Hello everyone, it's Cecelia Towns, a Sporty Esquire, and you're here with me for another episode of Working Women Wednesday. That's right, it is Working Women Wednesday, which is the series where I share with you the things that I have learned and the things that I'm actually currently, today learning from my experience as an attorney, as an entrepreneur, and as an athlete. So this week I want to talk to you about something that maybe you've been hearing about recently, but it's disruption. And disruption is this idea that you change the way something is done, you shift the way thought happens, you cause a shift, you cause movement, you challenge a system that currently exists. And this disruption is often necessary, right? And it can literally, if it's done the right way, if it's powerful enough, it can really change society. And that's something I'll touch on a little later. But disruption, just because disruption has sort of a boisterous connotation, that doesn't mean that the way you disrupt has to be loud and boisterous, right? The way you disrupt is going to be in line with who you are personally. It's going to fit who you are. So it doesn't, don't be afraid of the word disrupt because you feel like you're not like a disruptive person. Just know that you can disrupt in a quiet manner. So first you want to figure out if you should even be worried about disrupting in a certain space. And I would think of like these 4 different signs that maybe, yes, you should push your voice forward. You should try to change the way things are being done. And the first is that you don't see yourself, if you're in a particular industry, you don't see yourself being represented. You don't hear your voice coming out. No one is talking to you. If you're working in an industry or if you have ideas about a certain project or a certain industry and you don't feel your voice being heard, that is often a good time or a good sign that maybe you should disrupt. Maybe you should make sure that people are hearing your voice or representing your voice, because usually if you feel like your voice isn't being heard, there's other people who are feeling the same way, and so that's an opportunity for you to fill that void. Another sign is that you're getting a lot of no's. So you realize that your voice isn't being heard, and so you want it to be heard. So you start asking for it to be heard, and you hear no. Those no's that you're hearing are not a sign that your voice shouldn't be heard. It's a sign that you might need to go get it heard in another way. Are you feeling levels of discomfort where you currently are? If you have these ideas, you have these goals, and you're uncomfortable where you are, that might be a sign that it's time for a shift and time for you to disrupt. And then sometimes it's just that feeling, like I just know I have to go do this. That's how it was with the summit. I mean, I just knew that I had to go do this. I just knew that I had to start Gladiators. I just knew that I had to go to law school. I just knew. And sometimes you just got to follow that feeling that you have. So once you figure out whether you should disrupt or not, then you want to look at, well, how do I go about disrupting this industry, disrupting the people's thought processes? What do I do? And the first thing I always say, or I try to do, is to be clear about my voice and my brand, right? People who are going to respond, or people will only respond to your attempts to disrupt, your attempts to do things differently, if you are clear about how you're different, what you're offering, why they need to listen. So you have to, before you jump out the window and say, boom, we're here, we're going to change the way you do XYZ, we're going to change the way you think about XYZ, you have to be clear on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, so that the people that you're trying to attract, they'll be clear on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. You also want to be clear about not just who you are, your brand, but you want to be clear about the product that you're offering. You don't want there to be any confusion about what you're offering, how what you're offering is different than what's already out there. You need to set yourself and your product apart. And by product, I mean it's anything that you're trying to get people to buy into. If I use myself as an example, the blog is a product. The summit was a product. Our mentorship is a product. And all of these things are pretty much other people have. So it's our job, my job, to help people understand why our summit, why our blog, why our mentorship program, why our events, our workshops are for them, and why they are different than the other things that exist out there. And then the third thing you need to do if you're trying to disrupt, you've already established that you need to disrupt, is to be relentless at selling them. Be relentless at selling your brand, who you are, and be relentless at selling the product. You can't let up. There is no, oh, I'm going to take a day off from disruption. No, that's not how it works. Until you reach the level where you're like, boom, I have disrupted, people hear me, people constantly want more. And when I say me, I mean whatever, your product, whatever, your idea, then you don't let up. You don't let up until your voice is heard, until that job you wanted is yours, until the vision for your event, for your clothing line that you're designing, until that is in fruition. And so then after you've disrupted, what are some of the possible results of disruption? Why? What's the motivation? Because all of this disrupting stuff, it takes time. It takes energy. It takes getting to know yourself. It takes money. So why is it even worth it? And I think it's worth it because that's how movements and shifts in culture start. They start with 1, 2 people wanting their voice to be heard, wanting to share their vision and doing it relentlessly. And then it just catches on like wildfire. And then all of a sudden, people are seeing the world differently. That's how you change the world. That's a powerful thing. And it comes from disruption. I also think that it's important that you put in the effort to disrupt because you really do change lives. You have the opportunity to, as you're shifting culture, to change people's lives for the better. And so it is worth the work. It is worth the effort. It's worth the time. It's worth the pain. It's worth the taking the L's, because I believe that we're all called here to this earth to do something great, to have an impact on people's lives. And sometimes having that impact requires that you do things a little differently, that you disrupt in society. And so you shouldn't be afraid to take on any of those things, because the reward from it all can be massive. So disrupt, figure out if you need to disrupt and where exactly the disruption needs to happen, and then do it and go change the world. Go be great. Go be fearless. Disrupt. This has been Cecelia Towns of Sporty Esquire for another episode of Working Women Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you're following Sporty Esquire and Gladiators on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, to stay up to date to the great things we have in store for you. Bye.